Snow drifted like lost feathers over the old Dakota station, and the wind hummed through the warped boards like a ghost still trying to speak. The lantern on the post flickered, throwing trembling light onto the shape of a man who had long stopped waiting for trains. His name was Shapper. 30 winters had hardened his shoulders, his jaw, his heart. He had come west to outpace his past and found that loneliness travels faster than horses. He stood there, coat drawn close, the sound of the storm pressing against him like a confession. Then, between the white blur of falling snow, he saw motion. 2 small figures staggered toward the station, shapes half formed by the wind. At first, he thought them mirages, some trick of fatigue. But then came a voice, thin, trembling, a child's whisper scraping through the dark. "Can my mama give birth in your cabin?" Shapper froze. The words slipped through him like a prayer no one had ever dared to ask. The child was small, a scrap of color against the white, her cheeks raw and her braids stiff with frost. Behind her, a woman collapsed into the snow, clutching her belly. He moved without thought. The world narrowed to the sound of boots crunching ice, the cold searing his lungs, and the faint, uneven pulse of the woman's breath. When he lifted her, she was lighter than a bundle of sticks, her skin burning and freezing all at once. He carried her inside the cabin, the child following with her small hand fisted around a ragged doll. The fire was little more than embers, but he fed it wood until light climbed the walls like new hope. The woman's face was young, yet lined by pain and exhaustion. The child, Winona, spoke softly, her voice full of the kind of calm that only the very young or the very broken can manage. "Mama's been sick since they hit her," she said. Shapper looked up sharply. "They?" She nodded, eyes wide. "The ones who said she's cursed. Said she'd bring another daughter and shame their house. They left us in the snow." He said nothing. The story fit the world he knew, cruel, small, ruled by men who believed suffering kept order. The woman, Adsela, stirred then, whispering something in a tongue older than the plains themselves. Sweat glazed her forehead. He could tell the child had been carrying more than her own weight. "Help me," she breathed. And he did. The night folded into hours without measure. The wind clawed at the windows, but inside the cabin time thickened, the air smelling of blood, wood smoke, and fear. Shapper found his hands steady when they had no right to be. He boiled water, tore linen, spoke to her in the slow rhythm of a man trying to anchor her to life. Winona held her mother's hand, whispering stories about rivers and stars, stories Adsela had taught her on better days. When the child was born, it was as though the storm outside surrendered. The cry that filled the cabin was not just of new life, it was defiance, a sound that dared the world to try again. A boy. A living thing that no cruelty had managed to erase. Adsela looked at the infant and began to cry, silent at first, then shaking. Shapper placed the baby in her arms and stepped back, letting the moment belong to them. Winona crept closer, touching her brother's cheek with reverent awe. "See, Mama," she whispered. "You made the sun come back." Shapper turned away then. He told himself it was to stoke the fire, but it was because his chest ached. Something unnamed was breaking open inside him. For years, he had believed himself past redemption, past belonging. Yet here were 3 lives demanding warmth, and he was the only one who could give it. By morning, the blizzard had eased into silence. The light through the small window painted the room gold. Adsela slept, her face finally untroubled. Winona sat beside the bed humming softly, the baby against her lap. Shapper busied himself with unnecessary tasks, cleaning his rifle, sorting the tools, anything to keep from looking at them too long. When Adsela woke, she tried to rise but winced. "I owe you my life," she said, voice barely above a whisper. He shrugged. "Ain't much to owe. You'd have done the same." Her gaze lingered on him. "You don't know that." He met her eyes then. They were dark, deep as the riverbeds after rain. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The silence between them was not empty, it was full, heavy, a place where understanding could live. Winona broke it with a question. "Mister, do you live here all alone?" He nodded. "Don't much need company." The girl tilted her head. "Everybody needs somebody." Her words fell like a small truth disguised as a child's thought. Shapper didn't answer. He turned to the window, watching how the world was still and clean after the storm, how footprints led from the door to nowhere. In the days that followed, Adsela regained her strength slowly. She cooked when she could, though Shapper insisted she rest. The baby, whom she named Tyanita, Little Wolf, slept tucked close to her, while Winona followed Shapper outside, mimicking the way he split wood or checked traps. He taught her how to listen for the soft rustle of animals in the brush, how to find the tracks even in melting snow. Sometimes, Atsila would stand by the doorway, watching them. The sight of her daughter laughing again was something she hadn't dared hope for. She noticed how Shapa moved, always with care, as though afraid to disturb the quiet he'd built around himself. He spoke little, but each act of kindness, a blanket folded, a pot mended, spoke louder than words. At night, they would all sit near the fire. Atsila would hum a tune from her childhood, low and haunting, and Shapa would listen with his head bowed, as if each note reminded him of something he'd once believed in. He had known many women in passing, but never one whose silence felt like prayer. Then one afternoon, as the snow began to soften into mud, Shapa saw dust rising on the horizon. 2 riders. He knew trouble when he saw it. The way Atsila stiffened beside him confirmed it. "They found me," she said. Her voice trembled, not from fear for herself, but for her children. Shapa's hand hovered near his rifle. "You sure?" She nodded. "My husband's brothers. They said I shamed the family by birthing girls. When he died, they took the land. Said I was a curse." The riders came fast, spitting curses before their horses even stopped. They called Atsila names that no one deserved. Shapa stepped out onto the porch, the rifle resting loose in his hand. He did not raise it, he didn't need to. "Turn around," he said. One of them sneered. "You don't know what she is, stranger." Shapa's voice stayed calm. "I know what she ain't. She ain't yours to hurt." They read something in his face, something final. The riders spat, cursed, but the wind had shifted. They turned back toward the hills, leaving only their tracks and the echo of their hatred. When Shapa re-entered the cabin, Atsila was crying quietly. He set the rifle aside and knelt beside her. "You're safe now." She shook her head. "No one's safe forever. Then we'll take it one day at a time." Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. The firelight softened everything, the scars on his hands, the lines of fear around her mouth. He reached for her hand. She let him. For a moment, they sat in silence, 2 souls stitched together by circumstance and something far deeper. That night, when the children slept, Atsila whispered, "I used to think men were only storms. You," she paused, searching for the words. "You built a shelter instead." He didn't speak, but his thumb brushed against her knuckles, a small gesture that carried the weight of all his unspoken things. Outside, the snow began to fall again, gentle, forgiving. Spring came quietly after that. The river thawed. The land around the cabin softened, and with it, the walls Shapa had built inside himself began to crumble. Atsila planted seeds beside the porch. Winona chased the first butterflies of the season. The baby's laughter filled the air like music. Travelers passing through the valley sometimes spoke of the cabin where smoke always rose straight and steady from the chimney, where a cowboy once found a family in the snow. They'd say he had eyes that had seen too much of death, but a voice soft enough to calm a crying child. In the evenings, Shapa would sit on the porch, carving small wooden animals for Winona, his rough hands gentle around the blade. Atsila would hum as she rocked Tyanita to sleep. Each sound, each gesture, stitched them closer to something like peace. Sometimes he would catch her looking at him, and a strange warmth would move through him, something almost like faith. Not the church kind, but the kind born from surviving together. One night, as dusk turned the sky violet, Atsila asked, "Will you ever go back east?" He shook his head. "Ain't nothing there but ghosts." "And here?" He looked at her, at the firelight resting on her cheek, at the children sleeping behind her. "Here feels alive." The wind sighed through the pines, carrying away the last of winter's cold. Years later, when travelers asked Shapa about the night the storm brought him a family, he would smile in that quiet, distant way of men who have known both loss and mercy. Sometimes, he'd say, "God don't send angels in light. He sends them through snow." And if you passed by that cabin, you might swear you heard laughter in the wind, soft, human, full of life's second chances. For even the loneliest heart, once cracked open, can become a home again.